The sky above Seoul burned orange and red. Ships that looked like giant insects filled the air, dropping fire on everything below. Buildings that had stood for hundreds of years turned to ash in seconds. People ran through the streets, screaming, looking for safety that did not exist. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance, humanity's last great warship. He watched the screens that showed Earth dying. Seoul was burning. Tokyo was gone. New York had fallen silent 3 hours ago. The Vorthan swarm had come without warning. And they had come to kill. Park was 52 years old. He had served in the fleet for 30 years. He had seen battles. He had seen death. But he had never seen anything like this. His hands shook as he watched a school collapse on a screen, knowing there were children inside. "Admiral," his second officer said, "we have lost contact with the African defense grid. Europe is requesting immediate support. South America reports their fleet is destroyed." Park closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard. "Open a channel," he said, "to everyone, every member of the Galactic Concord, every species that signed the treaty, all of them." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir." Park stepped forward. He had practiced speeches before. He had spoken to crowds, and leaders, and soldiers. But this was different. This was a plea for survival. "This is Admiral Park Do-hyun of the United Earth Fleet," he said. "The Vorthan swarm has attacked our homeworld without any warning or reason. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. Billions of people." He paused, fighting to keep his voice steady. 50 years ago, humanity joined the Galactic Concord. We signed treaties of friendship and defense. We were told that we were part of something bigger. We were told that if any member was attacked, the others would help. Park looked at the screens. A hospital ship was trying to evacuate patients. A Vorthan fighter destroyed it with a single shot. "We are invoking Article 7 of the Concord Charter. We are asking no. We are begging for immediate help. Send your fleets. Send your soldiers. Send anything. Our children are dying in the streets. Please." His voice cracked on the last word. He did not care. "Please help us." The transmission ended. Park stood still, waiting. The galaxy had heard. 47 species, spread across thousands of star systems. Powerful civilizations, with great fleets and advanced weapons. Surely someone would come. Hours passed. The communications officer looked up, confused. "Sir, we are receiving responses." "Put them through." The first was from the Valari Dominion, the most powerful military force in the Concord. Their ambassador appeared on screen, a tall being with silver skin and cold eyes. "The Valari Dominion has received humanity's request," the ambassador said. "Unfortunately, our fleets are currently engaged in patrol operations along our border. We cannot send assistance at this time. We wish humanity success in resolving this matter." The screen went dark. Park stared at it. "Patrol operations," he whispered. The next message was from the Keth Collective. They expressed deep sympathy for humanity's situation. They said they would discuss the matter in their council. They said they hoped for a peaceful resolution. They sent nothing. The Luminary Republic did not even respond. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy sent their excuses. Some were polite. Some were cold. Some simply ignored the message entirely. But they all said the same thing in different words. Humanity's problem was not their problem. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the ruined city of Busan, Councilwoman Baek Ji-yeon gathered what remained of the government. She was 42 years old, young for her position. But the war had aged her. Her eyes, once warm, had become cold and hard. Around her sat 12 people, all that was left of the 100-member council. The others were dead or missing. "The Concord has refused to help," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "Every species, every one of them, Minister Cho Sun-woo slammed his fist on the table. We signed treaties. We gave them resources. We supported them in their wars. And now? They abandon us? Yes, Baek said simply. Then what do we do? Another minister asked. Baek looked at them all. We survive. Alone. And so humanity fought alone. They fought with everything they had. When their warships were destroyed, they used cargo ships. When their missiles ran out, they loaded mining explosives onto shuttles and flew them into Vorthan carriers. When their soldiers fell, civilians picked up their weapons and kept fighting. In Seoul, a group of university students held a bridge for 6 hours against Vorthan ground forces, giving time for thousands to escape. None of them survived. In Mumbai, an old grandmother flew her transport ship directly into the engine of a Vorthan hive ship. The explosion took out 17 enemy fighters. In Cairo, a father carried his wounded daughter 30 kilometers through burning streets to reach a medical station. He died of his wounds an hour after arriving. She lived. Admiral Park led the remaining fleet in a desperate attack on the Vorthan command vessel. They lost 40 ships, but they killed the Swarm Queen. And without her, the Vorthan fell into confusion. It took 3 more months of fighting. 3 months of blood and fire and death. But humanity drove the Vorthan back. The swarm retreated to their home systems, broken and defeated. Earth had won, but Earth had also died. 3 billion people were gone. Cities were ruins. Oceans were poisoned. The sky was gray with ash that would not clear for years. On the day the last Vorthan ship left the solar system, Admiral Park stood beside Councilwoman Beck in a field of rubble. It had once been the city of Incheon. Now it was just broken stone and bones. Around them, soldiers stood in silence. There was no cheering. There was no celebration. There was only exhaustion and grief. We won, Park said quietly. Did we? Baek looked at the ruins. 3 billion dead. Our world destroyed. And the galaxy watched and did nothing. She turned to face him. Her eyes were dry. She had no more tears. They heard us beg, Do-hyun. They heard our children scream, and they chose to let us burn. On test. Park had no answer. Baek looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valari were patrolling their borders. The Keth were holding council meetings. The Luminari were living in their beautiful cities, untouched by war. We will rebuild, she said. And then, Beck's jaw tightened. And then, we will make sure they never forget what they did. We will make sure no one ever ignores humanity again. Come. Park studied her face. He saw the anger there, cold and deep. He saw the pain that had turned to something harder, something more dangerous. That could take decades, he said. Then it takes decades. Baek turned away from the stars. We are patient. We know how to wait. And we know how to remember. Oak. She began to walk toward the transport that would take her back to the temporary capital. Then she stopped and looked back at Park. Tell the people to rest, she said. Tell them to heal, to rebuild their homes. Tell them to raise their children and plant their crops. Her voice dropped low. But also tell them to remember this day. Tell them to remember the silence from the stars. Tell them to teach their children what the galaxy did to us. Why? Park asked. Baek's smile was thin and cold. Because one day, their children will be the ones who answer. She walked away, leaving Park alone in the ruins. He stood there for a long time, looking at the gray sky, listening to the wind blow through empty streets. Then he turned and followed her. Humanity had survived the fire. But in that fire, something new had been born. Something hard and cold and patient. The galaxy had taught humanity a lesson about trust and betrayal. Now humanity would spend the next 50 years learning how to teach that lesson back. The first chapter of the story was over. But the story was far from finished. 50 years is a long time. Long enough for children to grow old. Long enough for wounds to heal. Long enough for the galaxy to forget. And the galaxy did forget. The great powers of the galactic concord moved on with their lives. The Valari expanded their trade routes. The Keth built new colonies. The Luminari held their festivals and celebrated their culture. Sometimes, at diplomatic events, someone would mention the HFY War and what had happened to Earth. They would shake their heads sadly and say it was terrible, truly terrible. Then they would change the subject and talk about something else. To them, humanity was a small, broken species on a damaged world. They had survived, yes, but surely they were too weak to matter. The Concord offered humanity a junior observer seat. A position with no power, no vote. Just the right to sit in the room and watch. It was an insult disguised as kindness. Humanity accepted it with a smile. Ambassador Kang Tae-hyun was the human representative to the Concord. He was a small man, with gray hair and gentle eyes. He bowed to the Valari. He praised the Keth. He thanked the Luminari for their continued interest in humanity's development. He laughed at their jokes and agreed with their opinions, and never, ever complained. The other species thought he was weak. They thought he was pathetic. They were wrong. Every night, after the meetings and dinners, Kang returned to his quarters and sent encrypted messages back to Earth. He reported everything he saw and heard. He sent details about fleet movements and political conflicts and secret agreements. He identified which officials could be bribed and which ones had secrets they wanted hidden. "They still don't see us," he wrote in one report. "They think we are broken. They think we are grateful for their scraps. Good. Let them keep thinking that." Back on Earth, Supreme Chancellor Baek Ji-yeon read every report. She was old now, in her 90s, kept alive by advanced medicine that humanity had developed in secret. Her hair was white, and her face was lined, but her eyes still held the same cold fire they had held 50 years ago in that ruined field in Incheon. She had not forgotten. She would never forget. Under her leadership, humanity had rebuilt. On the surface, Earth looked like a recovering world, cities rising from ruins, farms spreading across healed land, people living peaceful lives. The Concord sent observers sometimes, and they saw what they expected to see. A humble species, working hard, slowly getting better. They did not see what was hidden. Director Yoon Min-jae ran the United Earth Research Initiative from a base built inside an asteroid in the outer solar system. He was a thin man, with quick eyes and hands that were always moving. He had lost his entire family in the war, parents, wife, 2 sons. He had not smiled in 50 years, but he had worked. Under his direction, human scientists had done impossible things. They had captured Vorthan biotechnology from the war and learned its secrets. They had combined it with human science to create weapons the galaxy had never seen. Gravity manipulators that could crush a warship into a ball the size of a fist. Phase drives that let ships slip between dimensions, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Sensor systems that could track a single ship across 1,000 light-years. And something called Echo Protocol. A program that could take control of any networked computer system and turn it against itself. "Show me," Baek said during one of her visits to the asteroid base. Yoon led her to a testing chamber. Inside, a captured Valari defense drone floated in the center of the room. "This drone has the most advanced security systems the Valari have developed," Yoon said. "It should be impossible to hack." He pressed a button. The drone's lights flickered. Then, slowly, it turned and aimed its weapons at the wall. "It now thinks the wall is an enemy ship," Yoon said. "We can make it believe anything we want. And we can do this to their entire fleet." Baek nodded slowly. "What about their planets? Their stations? Anything with a computer. We send the signal, and their own systems destroy them." For the first time in years, Baek smiled. "Good," she said. While Yoon built the weapons, General Han Soyun built the fleet. She was the daughter of a soldier who had died in the war. and she had joined the military on her 18th birthday. Now she was 63, with gray streaks in her black hair and scars on her hands from years of work. The shipyards were not on Earth. They were scattered across 100 hidden locations in asteroid fields, on moons with no names, in systems the Concorde had dismissed as worthless. The Concorde never looked there, so they never saw the ships being built. And what ships they were! The old human fleet had been built from desperation cargo ships with guns attached. Civilian vessels converted for war. These new ships were different. They were sleek and black and silent, designed from the start to kill. Han walked through the construction bay of her flagship, the HSS Remembrance. It was a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that the Concorde had never imagined. Around it, 300 other ships waited in the darkness, ready for orders that had not yet come. "How long until we are ready?" she asked her chief engineer. 6 months for full combat capability. Han nodded. "Make it 4. General." "Make it 4. The engineer saw the look in her eyes and did not argue. Back on Earth, the people lived their lives. They worked and married and had children. They taught those children to read and write and do mathematics. They also taught them history. Every school had a wall with names on it, the names of everyone who had died in the war. Every child learned to read those names. Every child learned what the galaxy had done. They did not teach hatred. They taught something colder. "The galaxy let us burn," the teachers said. "Remember that. Remember it forever." The children remembered. Some of them grew up to be scientists in Yoon's laboratories. Some became soldiers in Han's fleet. Some became spies in Kang's network, infiltrating alien governments and corporations and militaries. All of them carried the memory of what had happened. All of them knew what they were working toward. 50 years after the war, a Valari diplomat named Torath visited Earth for a goodwill tour. He expected to see a broken world. He expected grateful humans who would thank him for his species' attention. He was surprised. The cities were beautiful, not just rebuilt, but better than before. The technology was advanced in some ways, more advanced than Valari technology. And the people looked at him with strange eyes. Not grateful, not humble, something else. Kang accompanied him on the tour, smiling and polite, as always. "You have done well," Torath said as they walked through the streets of the New Seoul. "Your recovery is impressive." Eight. Thank you," Kang said. "We have worked hard. Still," Torath continued, "you must understand that humanity will always be a junior member of the galactic community. You are a young species. You have much to learn." Kang's smile did not change. "Of course. We are always learning." That night, Torath sent a report to his government. He said that humanity had recovered faster than expected. He said their technology seemed unusually advanced. He said there was something in the human's eyes that made him uncomfortable. The report was received. It was read. It was filed away and forgotten. The Valari had more important things to worry about than a small, young species on a distant world. This was a mistake. On Earth, Chancellor Bake called a meeting of her inner council. Yoon, Han, Kang, and a few others. They gathered in a room deep beneath the government building in Seoul. "Report," she said. Yoon spoke first. "Weapons systems are complete. Echo protocol is tested and ready." Han was next. "The fleet is at full strength. Crews are trained. We can deploy within 48 hours of your order." Kang finished. "Our intelligence network covers every major species. We know their secrets. We know their weaknesses. They know nothing about us." 8. Beck listened in silence. Then she stood and walked to a window. Outside, she could see the memorial garden, a kilometer of stone walls, covered with the names of the dead. 50 years, she said quietly. "We have waited 50 years. She turned back to face them. 3 billion people died while the galaxy watched. I made a promise to them. I said we would never be ignored again. I said we would make the galaxy remember. Her voice hardened. It is time to keep that promise. She looked at each of them in turn. Begin final preparations. When I give the word, we move. Han nodded. And the word? Chancellor? When? Bake's eyes were cold. Soon, very soon. The 50 years of silence were almost over. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. They had looked away, comfortable in their power, certain that the young species would never be a threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Keth homeworld was beautiful at night. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, casting silver light on the towers of the capital city. The streets were quiet. The people slept peacefully, protected by the most powerful defense grid in their sector. Hundreds of warships patrolled the system. Thousands of weapons platforms orbited the planet. The Keth Collective had spent centuries building these defenses. They believed they were untouchable. They were wrong. At exactly midnight, local time, every screen on the planet lit up with the same message. It was in the Keth language, and it said, "You heard us beg. You let us burn. Now witness the consequence." Then their defenses turned against them. The weapons platforms stopped targeting enemy ships. Instead, they targeted each other. Explosions lit up the orbit like a string of firecrackers. The patrol ships received new orders from their own computers. Orders that told them to fire on the nearest friendly vessel. Captains screamed commands, trying to override the systems, but nothing worked. The computers would not listen. In the capital, the lights went out. The power grid failed. Emergency systems activated, then failed too. People stumbled into the streets, looking up at the sky, watching their fleet destroy itself. And then, the human ships arrived. General Han So-yeon stood on the bridge of the HSS Remembrance as it dropped out of phase space directly above the Keth capital. Behind her came 300 vessels, appearing out of nothing like ghosts. They did not speak. They did not demand surrender. They simply began to destroy what was left. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was not really a battle, it was an execution. The Keth military had been the 3rd strongest in the Concord. By morning, it was nothing. Han ordered her ships to hold position above the capital. Then she sent a message to the Keth ruling council. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, we will begin bombing your cities. We will start with the schools. End quote. We will start with the schools. The Keth surrendered in 30 minutes. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The humans had attacked. The humans had won. The Keth Collective, a founding member of the Galactic Concord, had fallen in less than a day. Emergency meetings were called. Ambassadors shouted at each other. Military commanders demanded action. No one understood what had happened. How had humanity become so powerful? How had they hidden this? Where had they gotten these weapons? The Valari Dominion, always the most powerful and most arrogant species in the Concord, responded first. Their High Council met in emergency session and made an announcement. Humanity's actions were illegal, immoral, and would not be tolerated. The Valari would mobilize their entire fleet over 1,000 warships and crush the human rebellion. They got lucky with the Keth, the Valari fleet admiral said. That will not happen again. Humanity is still a young, weak species. We will remind them of their place. End quote. The Valari began preparing for war. On Earth, Chancellor Bake watched the news reports with a thin smile. She sat in her office, surrounded by screens showing the chaos in the Concord. The Valari were angry. The Luminari were afraid. The other species were confused, unsure what to do. They are reacting exactly as we predicted, she said. Director Yoon nodded. The Valari will attack. They cannot allow this challenge to stand. Their pride will not permit it. How long until they are ready? 2 weeks. Perhaps 3. Beck turned to General Han, who was attending the meeting by video from her ship. Are you prepared? Han's face was calm. We are ready. But before the Valari could attack, Beck had one more thing to do. She called Ambassador Kang back from the Concorde. She wanted to send a message, and she wanted the whole galaxy to hear it. The broadcast went out to every planet, every station, every ship in known space. Beck stood in front of cameras, alone, looking directly at the lens. 50 years ago, she began, the Vorthan swarm attacked Earth. They burned our cities. They killed 3 billion people. We were members of the Galactic Concorde. We had signed treaties of mutual defense. Her voice was steady, but there was ice beneath it. No one came. The Valari said their ships were busy. The Keth said they would discuss it. The Luminari did not even respond. You all heard us begging for our children's lives. You all chose to let us die. She held up a small device. This contains the transmission logs from that day. Every species that received our plea. Every species that ignored it. We have kept these records for 50 years. We have never forgotten. We have kept these records for Midarar. We have kept these records for Midarar. We have kept these records for Midarar. We have kept these records from that day. Behind her, images appeared on screens. The burning cities, the dead bodies, the children who never grew old. Beck let them play for a long moment. The Keth were the first to pay for their choice, she continued. They will not be the last. You called our actions unprovoked. We call them earned. You built a Concorde based on promises of protection. Those promises were lies. Now you will learn what happens when you break faith with humanity. She looked directly into the camera. We are coming for all of you. Not because we are evil. Not because we enjoy killing. But because the galaxy must learn that humanity is not to be ignored. That our lives matter. That when we ask for help, and you refuse, there are consequences. She paused. This is your only warning. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Fight us, and we will show you the same mercy you showed us. The broadcast ended. The Luminari Republic, the most culturally advanced species in the Concorde, responded within hours. Their leader, a being of light called the Prelate, called for a peace summit. Surely, they said, this could be resolved through diplomacy. Surely humanity could be reasoned with. Ambassador Kang attended the summit. He sat across from the prelate in a beautiful room filled with crystal and light. The prelate radiated calm and superiority, certain that words could solve any problem. This violence serves no one, the prelate said. Yes, mistakes were made in the past, but revenge will not bring back your dead. Let us find a peaceful solution. Kang smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Mistakes, he repeated. Is that what you call it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, smiling at the camera. This is my daughter, Kang said. Her name was So Jung. 50 years ago, she was on a transport ship trying to escape Seoul. The Vorthan destroyed the ship. I found her body 3 weeks later. The prelate shifted, uncomfortable. Before she died, Kang continued, I sent a personal message to your government. I begged for help to evacuate civilians. Do you know what your government said? Do you know what your government said? The prelate was silent. They said that Luminari resources could not be allocated to non-member species. They said we were not important enough. Kang's voice was quiet, but it cut like a knife. My daughter died while your ships sat in their stations doing nothing. He stood up. There will be no peace summit. There will be no negotiation. There will only be consequences. You cannot threaten us, the prelate said. But there was fear in its voice now. The Luminari Republic has powerful allies. We have defenses. You have nothing, Kang said. You have computers and networks and systems, and we control all of them. Your defenses will not fire. Your ships will not fly. Your power will not turn on. He walked to the door. Within 1 month, your economy will collapse. Your government will fall. Your people will riot in the streets, and we will not fire a single shot." He looked back at the prelate. "That is the consequence for letting my daughter die." He left. The prelate tried to call for security, but the communications system was not working. It would never work again. 3 weeks later, the Luminary Republic collapsed. Their banking system failed. Their power grid went dark. Their government broke into fighting factions. Human operatives had spent years placing themselves in key positions, and now they pulled everything apart from the inside. The Luminari never saw a human warship. They never had the chance to fight. They simply fell. Meanwhile, the Valari were finally ready. Their fleet gathered at the edge of human space. 1,200 warships, including their legendary dreadnoughts, ships the size of small moons, carrying enough firepower to destroy planets. The Valari fleet admiral sent a message to Earth. "Humanity, you have committed crimes against the Concord and its members. Surrender now, and you will be treated fairly. Resist, and you will be destroyed. You have 1 day to respond." General Han received the message on her bridge. She read it once, then deleted it. "No response," she told her communications officer. "Let them come." Her fleet numbered 200 ships, against 1,200 Valari vessels, including their most powerful warships. It should have been a hopeless fight. Han was not worried. "All ships," she said calmly. "Prepare for phase jump. Target the Valari threshold." She sat back in her chair and looked at the stars. "It's time to show them what we've become." The Valari threshold was a region of space at the edge of human territory, and it was there that the two fleets met. On one side, 1,200 Valari warships, including 40 of their massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet. On the other side, 200 human vessels, small and dark and silent. The Valari fleet admiral, a veteran of 100 battles, looked at the tactical display and smiled. The humans were brave, he thought. Stupid, but brave. His ships outnumbered them 6-1. His firepower was 10 times greater. This would be quick. He opened a channel. "Human fleet? You are outmatched. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist, and you will all die." General Han Soyon sat on the bridge of the Remembrance, listening. Her face showed nothing. "No response," she said. Her tactical officer looked at her. "General, they outnumber us significantly. They're dreadnoughts, alone. I know what they have." Han's voice was calm. "And I know what we have. All ships. Activate phase drives. Attack pattern sundown." 200 human ships vanished. The Valari admiral blinked. One moment the human fleet was there. The next, empty space. His sensors searched but found nothing. "Where did they go?" he demanded. "Find them. Closed." His answer came 3 seconds later, when the human ships reappeared inside his formation. Not in front of it. Not around it. Inside it. The phase drive technology allowed human ships to slip through dimensions, bypassing normal space entirely. They could appear anywhere they wanted, including in the middle of an enemy fleet, behind shields, beside reactors. The Remembrance materialized next to a Valari dreadnought, so close that Han could see the individual windows on its hull. Before the dreadnought's crew could react, Han gave an order. "Gravity weapons. Fire." A beam of twisted gravity struck the dreadnought's midsection. The metal screamed. The ship folded in on itself like paper being crushed in a fist. Within seconds, a vessel the size of a small moon had become a sphere of compressed matter no bigger than a house. 30,000 Valari crew died without even knowing what hit them. Across the battle space, human ships appeared and disappeared, striking and vanishing, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. The Valari fired their weapons, but they hit nothing. They tried to coordinate, but their communications were becoming confused. Echo protocol was active. The Valari computer systems began to receive false orders. Targeting data was wrong. Navigation was corrupted. Ships that thought they were shooting at human vessels were actually shooting at each other. Dreadnoughts fired their main cannons into the backs of friendly cruisers. Defensive platforms targeted their own fleet. The Valari admiral screamed orders, but no one could hear him. His own ship's systems were failing. The lights flickered. The engines fired randomly. On the tactical display, green friendly icons were disappearing one by one. "This is impossible," he whispered. "This is not possible." But it was happening. General Han moved through the chaos like a knife through water. She had studied Valari tactics for years. She knew how they thought, how they fought, how they reacted to surprise. She used all of it against them. "Target their command ships," she ordered. "Cut off the head." Human vessels phase-jumped directly onto Valari command bridges, sometimes appearing so close that the two ships' hulls touched. At that range, even light weapons could do terrible damage. One by one, the Valari admirals and captains died, and with each death, the fleet fell further into disorder. 6 hours after the battle began, the Valari fleet admiral broadcast a surrender. His voice was shaking. "Human forces, we yield. We surrender, unconditionally. Please stop. Please." Han considered the message for a moment. Around her, the wreckage of the Valari fleet drifted in space, hundreds of destroyed ships, millions of dead. The greatest military power in the Concord had been broken in a single day. "Cease fire," she said. "All ships hold position." She opened a channel to the admiral. "Your surrender is accepted. You will power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." "Understood," the admiral said. He sounded like a man who had seen the end of the world. In a way, he had. On Earth, Chancellor Bake watched the battle reports come in. She sat alone in her office, the screens around her showing the scale of the human victory. 1,200 enemy ships, 40 dreadnoughts. The pride of the Valari military, all of it destroyed or captured in 6 hours. She should have felt triumphant. She did not. She felt tired. "It's done," she said quietly to the empty room. Finally done. But it was not done. Not yet. The Valari surrender sent shockwaves through the galaxy. If the Valari could fall, anyone could fall. Species that had ignored humanity for 50 years suddenly became very interested in making peace. Messages flooded in, offers of alliance, requests for negotiation, desperate pleas for mercy. Bake ignored most of them. She had a list, and she was working through it. Some species fought. They gathered their fleets and their armies and tried to stop the human advance. They all failed. Human technology was 50 years ahead of anything in the Concord. Human tactics were designed specifically to exploit alien weaknesses. And human soldiers fought with something the other species did not have. A cold, patient anger that had been building for half a century. Other species surrendered immediately, hoping for better treatment. They received it. Humanity was harsh but not cruel. They did not commit massacres. They did not destroy planets. They simply dismantled militaries, removed governments, and installed new systems that answered to Earth. "We are not here to rule you," Han told the leaders of one conquered world. "We are here to make sure you can never threaten us again. Obey, and you will live in peace. Disobey, and you will be removed. It is that simple." The conquered species obeyed. Within a year, 8 of the 12 major Concord powers had fallen. Some by military defeat, some by internal collapse, some by simple surrender. The Galactic Concord, which had stood for 3,000 years, was finished. Through it all, Admiral Park Do-hyun watched from retirement. He had given up active command years ago, passing the fleet to General Han. But he still followed the war. He still remembered. One day, he received a visitor at his home in the rebuilt city of Seoul. It was a young officer, a lieutenant who had served in the Battle of the Valari Threshold. "Sir," the lieutenant said, "I wanted to meet you. My grandmother was on the Defiance during the war. She told me about you. Every presented, to meet in Reblind to line, Let's next with Con said it. On the 2020-2022. Added. D's love. Gone. Gone. Park smiled sadly. The Defiance was a good ship. We lost her at the Battle of Europa. I know, sir. The lieutenant hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think what we're doing is right? The conquests? The war, is this justice? Park was quiet for a long time. He looked out the window at the city, at the people walking in the streets, at the children playing in the parks. 50 years ago, he said finally, I stood in a room full of dead children. Vorthan had killed them. We asked the galaxy for help, and the galaxy said, no. He turned to face the lieutenant. I don't know if what we're doing is right. Maybe history will judge us harshly. Maybe we are becoming the thing we hated. But I know this. My grandchildren will never have to beg. They will never have to watch the stars and hope for help that doesn't come. They will never know what it feels like to be ignored while their world burns. He paused. Is that worth what we've done? I don't know. But I know I can live with it. And I know that every species in this galaxy will remember what happens when you abandon humanity. The lieutenant nodded slowly. He did not look entirely satisfied, but he did not argue. After she left, Park sat alone for a long time, thinking. Outside, the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It reminded him of another sunset, 50 years ago, over a field of ruins. He had made his choice then. They all had. Now they lived with it. On the bridge of the Remembrance, General Han received reports from her captains. The last major resistance had fallen. The galaxy was effectively under human control. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt empty. She walked to a viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were the graves of her parents, killed in the war when she was a child. Somewhere out there was her sister's memorial, whose body was never found. I hope you can see this, she whispered. I hope you know we didn't forget. She stood there for a long time, alone with her thoughts and her memories and the cold light of distant suns. The war was almost over, but the hardest part was still to come, deciding what to do with victory. The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord had been built 3,000 years ago. It was enormous, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow, and walls covered with the symbols of 100 species. For millennia, representatives had gathered here to debate and negotiate and make laws. It had been the center of galactic civilization. Now it was quiet. The representatives still came, but they came as defeated peoples, not proud members. They sat in their seats and waited, speaking softly among themselves, glancing nervously at the human soldiers who stood along the walls. The symbols of their nations still decorated the hall, but everyone knew those symbols meant nothing now. Chancellor Baek Jeon walked to the central podium. She was 97 years old, kept alive by technology, but she moved with the same steady purpose she had shown 50 years ago in the ruins of Incheon. Behind her came her advisors, General Han, Director Yoon, Ambassador Kang, and others who had helped build humanity's rise. The hall fell silent as she reached the podium. She looked out at the assembled species, the Velari, the Keth, the Luminari, and all the others who had once looked down on humanity. They did not look down anymore. 3,000 years ago, Baek began, your ancestors built this Concord. They said it would be a place of cooperation and mutual protection. They wrote charters and treaties. They made promises. Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the vast hall. 50 years ago, humanity learned what those promises were worth. We learned that when our children were dying, you would do nothing. We learned that your treaties were paper, your charters were lies, and your protection was only for those you considered important. She paused, letting the words settle. We do not want your concord. We do not want your apologies. What we want is something you never gave us. Accountability. Behind her, screens lit up with a new document, the Charter of the Terran Dominion. Under this charter, humanity will serve as the guarantor of galactic peace. When a species is attacked, we will respond. When a species breaks faith, they will face consequences, not because we are generous, not because we are kind, but because we know what it means to be abandoned. She looked at them all, her eyes cold and steady. You ignored our plea. Now you will live under our protection, whether you want it or not. There were murmurs in the hall. Some species shifted in their seats. A few looked angry, but no one spoke. They had seen what happened to those who challenged humanity. They had seen their fleets destroyed, their governments toppled, their planets occupied. Finally, a Valari representative stood. He was young, one of the new generation who had grown up in the shadow of defeat. "And if we refuse?" he asked. His voice shook slightly, but he stood straight. Bake looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled a thin, cold smile. "Then you will learn the same lesson your fathers learned at the threshold. You will learn that humanity does not make threats. We make promises, and we keep them." The Valari representative sat down. He did not speak again. The charter was adopted. There was no vote, there did not need to be. The Terran Dominion was born, and the old galactic concord passed into history. In the days that followed, the new order took shape. Human governors were installed on key worlds. Human ships patrolled the major trade routes. Human laws replaced the old Concord regulations. It was not harsh rule. Humanity did not want slaves, just security. But it was absolute. General Han returned to Earth after the ceremony. She had been fighting for so long that she was not sure what to do with peace. She walked through the streets of Seoul, watching the people go about their lives, shopping, talking, laughing. Children played in parks. Couples walked hand in hand. It all seemed so normal. She made her way to the Memorial Garden, the great wall of names that stretched for a kilometer through the city center. She walked along it slowly, reading the names. So many names. Her parents were here. Her sister. Friends she had grown up with. She stopped at one name. Han Ye-jin. Her sister. She had been 19 when she died, a university student who had volunteered to help evacuate civilians. Her body had never been found. "We did it, Ye-yin," Han said softly. "We made them pay. Every single one of them." She touched the carved name gently. "I hope it was worth it. I hope you can rest now." She stood there for a long time, alone with the names and the memories. Across the city, Admiral Park sat on a hill overlooking the skyline. He had a bottle of traditional rice wine and 2 cups. He filled both, leaving one untouched beside him. "Remember when we were cadets?" he said to the empty air. "We thought we would explore the stars, make friends with aliens, have adventures." He sipped his wine. It didn't work out that way. He had lost his wife in the war. She had been a doctor on a hospital ship. The ship had been destroyed, trying to evacuate wounded from Seoul. He still remembered her last transmission. "Don't worry about me. Save the others." "I kept my promise," he said. "I kept them safe. Our grandchildren. Our great-grandchildren, they'll never have to beg. They'll never have to watch the sky and hope." He finished his wine and looked at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "I hope that's enough. I hope you understand." Ambassador Kang returned to his home for the first time in decades. His house had been rebuilt after the war, but he had never lived in it. He had always been on some alien world, smiling and bowing and gathering information. Now he walked through the empty rooms, looking at the furniture covered in dust sheets, the pictures on the walls. He stopped at one picture. His daughter, Sojung, on her 7th birthday. She was smiling, holding a cake, completely happy. "It's done," he told her. "They paid. All of them." He sat down in a chair and looked at the picture for a long time. "I don't know if it was right," he admitted. "I don't know if you would have wanted this. Maybe you would have wanted peace. Forgiveness. You were always kinder than me. He wiped his eyes. But I couldn't let them forget. I couldn't let your death mean nothing. So, I did what I could. I made them remember. He sat there until the sun went down, alone with his daughter's smile and his own quiet grief. Chancellor Bake held one final meeting with her inner council before she retired. She was too old to continue, she said. It was time for younger leaders to take over. The Dominion is established, she told them. The galaxy is under our control. Our people are safe. Our mission is complete. Director Yoon nodded. What about the future? There will be resistance. Some species will try to fight back. Then we will respond, Bake said simply. We will always respond. That is the point. That is why we did all this. So that no one will ever ignore humanity again. She looked at each of them. I am proud of what we built. I am proud of all of you. But remember why we did it. Not for power, not for revenge, for survival, for justice, for the 3 billion who died while the galaxy watched. She stood slowly, her old bones aching. Never forget that. Never become what they were. Never ignore a species that begs for help. Never let anyone die, because they are not important enough. She walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. We were broken once. We healed ourselves. We grew strong. Now we must grow wise. She left. The council sat in silence for a long moment, thinking about her words. Outside, the sun rose over a changed galaxy. Humanity had gone from a young, ignored species to the dominant power in known space. They had done it through pain and anger and 50 years of cold, patient work. They had made the galaxy remember what it meant to abandon humanity. But now came the harder task. Ruling wisely. Ruling justly. Being better than those who had failed them. In cities across Earth, people went about their lives. They worked and loved and raised children. They remembered the dead, but they also looked forward. They built schools and hospitals and parks. They made art and music and literature. They tried to be worthy of what they had won. And across the galaxy, other species learned to live under human protection. Some resented it, some feared it, but they all understood the truth. Humanity had asked for help once and been refused. They would not ask again. They would simply act, and the galaxy would answer. It was a new order. It was not gentle, but it was fair. It was not forgiving, but it was just, and it would last. In the memorial garden in Seoul, the names of the dead stretched on forever. 3 billion stories, 3 billion lives, 3 billion reasons why humanity had done what it did. A child walked along the wall with her grandfather, reading the names. Why are there so many? She asked. The old man looked at her, this child who had never known war, never known fear, never known what it was to be ignored. Because the galaxy forgot we mattered, he said. So we had to remind them. The child nodded. Not fully understanding, but accepting. She would learn the history in school. She would read the names and know the stories. And she would grow up in a galaxy that would never ignore humanity again. That was the victory. That was the point. That was why they had done it all.